You hear the name Henry Ford, and what comes to mind? Probably the Model T, right? The assembly line, the birth of the modern industrial age. But here's the thing, that story, the one we all think we know, is really only half the picture. The real story is so much more complicated and, honestly, a lot more troubling.
This right here, this is the Henry Ford of legend, a no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point genius who cared about one thing above pretty much everything else: efficiency. I mean, this single quote just perfectly captures that public image of the man who put the world on wheels by stripping away every single non-essential.
And what's did that obsession with efficiency get him? This number. That's how many Model Ts rolled off his assembly lines between 1908 and 1927. It's a number so huge it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around it. This wasn't just about making cars. This was about fundamentally transforming society. He wasn't just building a product, he was building a whole new world.
So, let's start with the Ford everyone knows and celebrates, the visionary industrialist, the man who, in so many ways, really did build the 20th century.
This timeline tells such an incredible story. Ford starts his company in 1903, and just 5 years later, the Model T comes out. But the real game changer, the thing that changed everything, was the moving assembly line in 1913. That allowed him to just slash the price from an already affordable $825 down to just $360 in only a few years. That is how you put an entire nation on the road. And the car itself was just a masterpiece of practical design. A steering wheel on the left? Well, that became the standard. An enclosed engine? That kept it safe from the elements on those rough country roads. But the really crucial points are the last two. It was simple to drive and cheap to fix. This wasn't some toy for the rich. It was a tool for the average American family. But Ford's revolution didn't just stop at the factory door. Oh no. He realized that to build a nation of consumers, he first had to build a totally new kind of worker. This number, $5, was an absolute earthquake. In 1914, Ford announced he would pay his qualifying male workers a $5 daily wage. You have to understand, at the time, that was a completely unheard of amount of money. This really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? He wasn't just giving his workers a little raise, he was more than doubling the average wage, from $2.34 a day to a flat $5. A newspaper at the time said the announcement shot like a blinding rocket through the dark clouds of the present industrial depression. Just wild. So you gotta ask, why? Was he just a generous guy? Well, not exactly. This wasn't charity. It was an incredibly shrewd business strategy. First, all the best workers in the city flocked to his factories. Second, it stabilized his workforce, which cut the massive costs of constantly training new people. And third, and this is maybe the most brilliant part, he was creating his own customers. He was paying his employees enough to buy the very cars they were building. And he didn't even stop there. A bit later, in 1926, he championed the 5-day, 40-hour work week that we know today. And his reasoning? He actually believed that giving workers more leisure time was good for business because it gave them more time to go out and consume things, including, taking their Fords for a drive. So far, we've got a visionary, a champion of the working class. But this is where our story takes a sharp and, frankly, a pretty unsettling turn, because Ford's progressive vision came with a very, very high price. See that $5 wage? Yeah, it wasn't automatic. There was a catch. To qualify for what was technically a profit-sharing plan, workers didn't just have to be good at their jobs. They had to be, good according to Henry Ford's very specific and very strict standards. He created this thing called the social department. And what was that? Well, it was essentially a team of company spies, 50 of them, who would literally visit employees' homes to make sure they were living properly. They'd check on everything from their finances to their hygiene to their marriage. It was paternalism on an industrial scale. And these were just some of the things that could get you disqualified from that full wage. If investigators found any evidence of heavy drinking or gambling or that you weren't supporting your family, you could lose your bonus. Ford wasn't just your boss. He was trying to be your moral guardian, too. This obsession with control absolutely extended to his view on labor. Despite those high wages, Ford was ferociously anti-union. He saw organized labor as a direct threat to his authority and his factory's productivity. And to fight it, he hired a man named Harry Bennett to run his service department, which basically used intimidation and violence to crush any union activity. This conflict boiled over in some really violent events, like the 1937 Battle of the Overpass. Union organizers, including a future president of the UAW, Walter Reuther, were just brutally beaten by Bennett's men in full view of the press. The photos of those bloodied organizers were a shocking stain on the reputation of the supposed workers' hero.
And this brings us to the fourth, and by far the darkest chapter of Henry Ford's life, his deep-seated, public, and incredibly influential anti-Semitism.
Now look, this wasn't some private prejudice he kept to himself. In 1918, he bought a newspaper, and for the next 7 years, he used it to publish some of the most vile anti-Semitic propaganda America has ever seen. These articles were then collected into a 4-volume book called The International Jew, and in 1938, his efforts were recognized when Nazi Germany awarded him one of its highest civilian honors.
The reach of this propaganda was just enormous. Ford forced every single one of his dealerships across the entire country to stock and distribute copies of his newspaper and that book. He literally used the business empire he built on efficiency and innovation to mass produce and mass distribute hatred.
And the impact was felt far, far beyond America's borders. Ford is the only American mentioned by name in Hitler's manifesto, Mein Kampf. In a 1931 interview, Hitler actually called Ford his inspiration and reportedly kept a life-sized portrait of the American industrialist right there behind his desk.
So how in the world are we supposed to put these pieces together? The brilliant innovator and the bigoted propagandist. The man who raised wages for thousands while violently suppressing their right to organize. It's a lot.
This table really lays it all out, side by side, the two Henry Fords. On one side, you've got the progressive capitalist who revolutionized industry, championed higher wages and the 40-hour work week, and really made the modern world possible. And on the other side, you have a man who used his immense power to promote hatred, to control his workers' private lives, and to earn the admiration of Nazis. They are not two different men. They are one and the same. And that leaves us with this essential and deeply uncomfortable question. What's the final verdict on a figure of such profound contradiction? Can you separate the achievements from the ideology? It's a question without any easy answers, and it forces us to grapple with the complex and often really troubling nature of greatness itself.